Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Mufc Realist TV with your host, Mick. For you who hasn't watched this podcast before, we have a special exclusive addition to this podcast, no other than the Swedish Rumble. You all seen him on the Twitter composing beautiful, logical tweets regarding the sales takeover, about legal, about the FFP, the financial fair play, and about Manchester United first and foremost. This is an exclusive podcast where, by protecting his identity, we will not have picture. I know him personally. He's a fellow countryman as mine. But before we continue, like and subscribe. Smash that like button below before I introduce him to the stage. We're going to talk about the facts regarding the takeover from a business perspective, from a merger and acquisition. We're going to talk about Harry Maguire's situation. We're going to talk about Manchester United's budget, how we're actually acting on the budgeting market at the moment, adhering to the FFP financial fair play. According to my opinion, FFP stands for fake financial predictions. We're going to debunk everything. We're going to talk also about none other than Mason Greenwood situation. So it's going to be very explosive. So buckle up, and are you ready to rumble? Because I do have this Swedish Rumble. Let's get ready to rumble.
Now, for the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world
on Mufc Realist TV.
Ladies and gentlemen, from Mandalay Bay, Las Vegas, let's get ready to rumble!
Now, welcome to Mufc Realist TV. As you heard in the introduction, I have a very exclusive guest in my studio who has chosen to be anonymous for a simple reason that he has a very crucial job that requires not for him to show his face, but he's come to Mufc Realist TV exclusively to talk about, what's going on with Manchester United in terms of the financial FFPs, what's going on with Mason Greenwood, and also what most of you are probably tuning into, what's going on with the takeover. Without further ado, I want you to introduce with the faceless guest in the frame here, Mr. Swedish Rumble. How are you today, sir?
Hi, Mick. Thank you, and thank you so much for the kind words. It's a pleasure to be on.
It is a pleasure too, sir, because we've been speaking all this summer during this takeover process. I know who you are, but I do respect the integrity, and we had some really interesting conversations. But I want to break the ice for people that don't know you, people that been on Twitter, are big admirers of your tweets and basically providing a voice of reasoning, logical, how things are moving in terms of, can you tell the audience, what you are and, who you are and what you do for living, X, Y, Z, and let's take it from there.
Absolutely. I'm a bit in a bit of a strange life situation and have a bit of a strange background. I'm a lawyer and become a partner at a law firm here in Sweden and so forth. And then, unfortunately, my son got very ill. He got bone cancer 3 years ago, and he has received treatment for that back and forth. And like with cancer, it comes back, and we are fighting it tooth and nails right now again. But on the flip side, all this heavy stuff, we spend a lot of time at the hospital. He's 15, and we share one thing, and that's, we both love football, and so we watch and follow Manchester United 24/7 at times, and we watch your channel and so much else. And being like I am, I have a bit of a inclination to really dive into things. So my interest in United have kind of is born again, and we have this takeover. It's amazing everything that's going on, and so it started, and like my son in that age, all they do is watch YouTube and social media, and we start each family as a thing, and it's been amazing. He's on YouTube watching analytics and see when to put up videos and helping me editing stuff and everything. So it's fun, and that's the great thing with Manchester United. It's a community. It's something you can kind of dive into and live in the universe.
Yeah, now first and foremost, I'm so it's sad to hear about your son, and I hope as well. And the second takeaway that I could understood that you're both are bonding together in form of Manchester United, and his illness has kind of then made your little bit more free up time, and in terms of the tweets that you're putting out and the analysis that you're putting out, it's been a revelation for many Manchester United fans that are following you. But in your work situation, you mentioned you work in a major big law firm, and how are you involved in that law firm? Is it sports law? You're dealing with the
no, actually,
mergers and acquisitions and
public M&A. So that's the only thing I'm really an expert on, Swedish public M&A. But with that said, it's of course, I think I can follow a lot of what is happening with this transaction regarding United. Even if I wouldn't take an assignment and bill people for legal advice regarding the Cayman Islands.
When you say M&A, that means for people that don't understand the terminology, mergers and acquisition.
Buying and selling companies.
Yeah. So in your line of work, you are dealing with the major corporations in advising, like, mergers and acquisitions. You are well versed in the sales and takeover processes because you probably worked with that before. So, just because it's not international, like you said, it's Swedish clients and stuff like that, doesn't mean that processes change, right? It's the same principle that you're applying, right?
It's very much the same. And we come across the big banks, Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan and those players. We work with them too. We don't, of course, have big international companies. I think it's not that different.
No, it's not that different, 100%. But so your passion lies, of course, at what you said. Like the line of work that you're doing, you're providing your expertise in your tweets is based on basically your personal experience working in that industry and mergers and acquisitions, and you can recognize the patterns, you can recognize the shadow bidding process as what's been dragging on for 10, 11 months. According to your opinion, is it taking well too long time, or is it normal? According to your opinion, we are on time. We're on track.
I think mergers and a takeover like this, when you have a public company and you have a buyer, someone wanting to buy it, it always take place at neck-breaking speed, because time is a risk for everyone. Time costs money and time's a risk. I think it's the same when you do an operation, a surgery. They want to close it up as fast as possible because time is a risk, and everything can happen. You can have Russia invade Ukraine, and the stock market, your shares is worth half as much overnight. So it's always done in a hurry. It's of course complex and require a lot of work. But with that said, the total remuneration to law firms for a transaction like this can be 25 million, 50 million.
Yeah, money.
So it's a lot of hours that goes into it, and
that's billable hours.
Yeah. And so when people say it's complex, of course it's complex. At the same time, you have basically two armies of lawyers that are working around the clock. So. Yes, I
And they're
think.
not cheap. They're not cheap. Lawyers are not cheap.
Yeah, but it's not so complex that it should take 9 months, 7 months, 6 months to get to the point we are today. Not even remotely. I think the first deadline set was end of first quarter, and I think that was perfectly reasonable. And then if it would have dragged on 2 weeks more or a month longer, that's one thing. But as soon as we got into May and June, I think we got past the time where the point in time where we can expect that the delays are due to practical reasons. I'm fairly certain that the delays right now are due to the sellers not being committed sellers at this level of bids they have received.
But there could also be that because I kind of divided. I have my sources and I have my way of working, and you always work on according to a project timeline, right?
Yeah.
And maybe I want to sort of dive right into it straight away with you to say that it does not really make sense to. There's no sense of urgency to announce a takeover bid in the middle of a transfer market, because I will divide this into budgeting. I will divide this into the transfer market to get the tenhag's target, which leads into the budget side of things. And then once you sort of acquired everything that you need, then the last step would be like, the takeover news, because we've seen some rumbles in the media coming out to say that the person that first helped the Glazer family to acquire Manchester United back in the days. I think it was, I can't remember the name. I don't know if you remember the name, but came out to say that, the Glazer have sold the club for 7.3 billion or 7.4 billion. Came out from that source. So that kind of gives what I've been saying, because this is getting very boring, but I want to sort of focus more on the realistic facts and in a business sense of project timeline to say that, I've been saying that I think that the original plan was to have it as what you said, that's what Rainy Group came in, because Rainy Group also makes money out of it. They want to close this as fast as possible and move on.
Definitely.
But under circumstances, things change, right?
Yeah.
There was some improved bid from Sheikh Yassim's side, and what I've been told as well, that they accepted this as the winning bid because it was always about evaluation, about the the premium buyout. We're talking about share prices and the minority investors. We're talking about legal challenges from the minority investors. We're talking about Lindsay Train, Bowen. Who else are we talking about? That didn't really like the Iniesta bid, because that left them out of the dark, because they want to profit as well. So at the end of the day, So at the end of the day, Swedish Rumble, if we tie this up, it all comes down to money. That you mentioned earlier, that solicitors, lawyers involved, which is Latham and Watkins. They are the legal solicitors to advisors to the Manchester United PLC. They make money. It's retainable, billable hours, right? So is this something that you come to an agreement first, or is it per hourly? Like, it could be 1,000 euros per hour, or is it retainer that we're talking about in this?
I think with a transaction like this, it's billable hours. It's so hard to predict for a law firm. For the Ring Group, I think they mostly, at least, will get paid through a success fee. So for them, it's normally very sensitive, and they will definitely push for a transaction to take place, because then is when they get paid, and then usually they get paid a lot more than the lawyers, but they take a risk that the lawyers don't really take to the same extent.
So it makes sense that for lawyers it's more profitable to keep this running as much as you can, and for Rainy Group is reverse. They want to close this off as soon as possible so they can take the commission and run. So it could be anything from 4 to 5 to 10%. But I also understand, if you look at the overall purchasing shadow bidding process, that there was a set date for Rainy Group that they tried to push this over the line before the transfer market opened. Was there actually to in that clause that they get a early close bonus? You know what I mean? Because normally, as a like, let's say a competitor, like, who can we say, Bain Group or KPMG, like a similar what do you call it, financial advisory firm, will always put in that clause, like if we manage to close this off before we get a sign of extra bonus. Is that also the case? Do you think that this is the case in this takeover process as well, or is it?
Yeah, I think so. That's definitely possible, and I also think from their point of view, if they close the transaction in Q1, they can move on and accept the next mission and start selling the next club. Now the people are tied up here, and I think they are out fishing for new bidders and of course working the current bidders right now. And I think it's interesting. You mentioned that 7.2 billion figure that came from the Cardiff guy at Cardiff right now.
Cardiff, yes, that's the one.
Yeah.
I don't remember the name, but if we can Google it quickly, then I will do that.
But the interesting thing is that I think everyone thought that why would they raise the bids from 5 billion to 7.2 billion? But if you look at what's 69% of 7.2 billion, it's 5 billion even. So I think that's the holdup. The Glazers think that they can get, because right now we look at the price they get paid, it's 69% of a valuation of the entire club, but they think someone will come through and value their shares as it was the whole club. I think someone will pay 5 billion for Manchester United and settle with 69%.
Okay, there's 2 points that I want to sort of backtrack a little bit what you're saying there, and before we dive into the next topic, Mr. Rumble, and that's basically like, as consultant, as legal firm, as the Rain Group forced the hand of the Glazers back in a couple of weeks ago to accept the winning bid, because we all saw that, Sheikh Yassim 92 Holding Foundation got a little bit frustrated, so they went around the kitchen door straight to the horse's mouth to say, okay, we're talking about a valuation price. Now we're talking about, in simple term, the premium buyout in terms of the Class B shares. So where's this 7.2 billion figure coming from? So if the Glazers owns about 115 million shares on 69% XYZ, and they're buying out a premium clause on $38 per share, that gives you a rough estimation about 6 billion only for the shares. So it's interesting to also understand what is the overall 7.2, because there's also the debt included, right? The bond that Bank of America holds, right? So Bank of America, in the current credit crisis situation, we call it credit crisis because it's the biggest crisis that we've seen since 2008, and it's going to get worse and worse and worse. Bank of America said, we want our debt that you own us to be paid back by 24, 25, right? If you agree with me there. So Glazers has put themselves back into corner. There's no minority investors, because normally, you can agree with this, when you go into a open bidding, like, this is not an open, this is a shadow bidding, of course. You sign the NDA, but you get access to certain information. You looked under that bonnet, right? And you've seen how poorly Avram and Joel have been running this club since 2015, since they inherited from Malcolm Glazer. Just basically credit rolling everything, all the transfers, putting us in the deeper debt more and more, the vicious cycle, till the financial reports came out in December. I think it was the Q4 report, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Which, because Manchester United is an open listed club, listed in New York Stock Exchange, and everyone can see that we run the club so poorly that we have 20 million left to 25 million left in the bank, right, as liquidity. And this was the case when you saw that the board of directors voted of no vote of confidence, meaning you cannot take out any more dividends. This was the end of the road. So I can arguably say that there's no more minority investors, and I can arguably say that there's no more fishing. I think it's more to the case that the purchase agreement has been completed, but it's between the buyer and the seller. And you can only follow what the media is saying, that has been horrendous in this reporting, because coming down to who makes money, well, everyone makes money, including the British press and media. There's been some media war. Let's recap this. Who is going to win the Pulitzer Prize here, because this is the biggest scoop of the century. You've seen, like, the sports journalists, the Guardian, the Times, we're not going to mention names, but then going after Bloomberg and Reuters and say you're wrong, this is false information. It's been one diabolical story after another. All of a sudden portraying, Sheikh Yassim is the winning bid. Oh no, actually now it's an opening door latest for for what's his name, Radcliffe, because of the legality. The latest what was come in because of there's still some legality issues to be solved. Now, what can that mean in your opinion? I will tell you my story, what I think, because the legality issue is to how do you solve the remaining of 31% of the Class Bs?
Yeah, and I think my opinion and view of that when I looked into it is that, and I think we might have a different view here, but my opinion is that there are really no legality issues here for Ineos to buy 69%. I don't think that's the holdup. And I think for those who want Qatar to win, for example, that must be seen as a positive conclusion, because that means that there is nothing stopping the Glazers from accepting Ineos bid if they wanted to. But I don't think they want to. I think they think Ineos bid is way too low.
It's too low.
Yeah, I think it's the sources on Ineos bid levels are fewer than what we heard about 9.2s, but some have said it can go up to 6 billion, a 6 billion valuation if in 3 years if they reach certain targets. But that just pays the Glazers about 3.5 billion in the best case scenario. And who knows what those terms are. So no, they would probably be guaranteed something like 2.9 billion. And I think this is that's my point, and why we haven't had the transaction yet is because the financial markets are in a horrible state right now. If this sale took place 1-2 years ago, we would have SPACs tripping over each other getting this done, but now money is really expensive. People have a lot of problems. They don't look to take on new problems. So it's hard to find a buyer. And I think the Glazers think that if they wait a year or two, they will get a lot more than today. And I think that's where the 7.2 figure comes in, because I don't think anyone ever will pay 7.2 billion for the club. I think, however, that they might find someone that is willing to pay 5 billion to the Glazers, and that's a 7.2 million valuation, and that new buyer, third bidder, so to speak, would settle with only 9%, just like the Glazers do today.
Yeah, no, true. But the article actually said that the Glazers will announce the sale, which ended up on 7.2 billion, and that is kind of yet to be dissected. So I would arguably say that the Class B shares has been bought up by a premium price, which could lead up to $38 per share, right? The Glazer family share, and plus the overall debt taking, buying out the bond from Bank of America. That so basically they walk away with 1 billion each in the pocket, because basically the company is registered in Cayman Island. And the other possibility that I see the holdup is the PR planning of certain things. So as I mentioned,
could definitely be the case.
No, they probably said so. This is what I've been hearing. Like, so the ones that have been leaking out information, because there's a lot of intermediates that work to sign the NDA, but from the Ineos camp, it's always been the lawyer's case that's been leaking out to the press because it's favorable PR, right? Definitely. But nothing's coming out from Sheikh Yassim because they've been quiet, and that's been frustrating some media. And because if it's silent, if you're not saying anything, then you create this rumor mill, and journalists today, as we've seen it, has been, even in the transfer market, they're using creative writing a lot to create stories. They're fabricating stories just to make this gravy train going, right? Because this generates a lot of clicks and money for them as well. I know. So for me, realistically speaking, knowing what I know, for me, I would just paint this picture up for you the way I see it. And you can say that I may be correct, or you're delusional, or you think it's on the path, right? So I see this in 3 steps. Like original plan was to sort of complete the sales before the transfer market opened. That was the original plan.
Yeah.
Both buyers wanted this, right? So they can influence the transfer market. But then they realized it doesn't really make sense right now because Ten Hag has a plan, right? Our strategy in terms of the recruitment transfer market, which we're going to dive into next topic, is to act like a club. We appointed the Matt Hargreaves. We replaced Matt Judge as a chief negotiator. We're acting as a club to say we will not overpay. We have a budget set, right? Do you get my point? We have a budget
I
to
get
play.
it. Yeah.
Because Ed Woodward, yeah, because Ed Woodward came in and said, like, if you remember his famous quote, "We're Manchester United. We can do what nobody else can do on this market." That was the start of the Manchester United tax, 20-30% on anything that we do. So we're desperately trying to get rid of that. So the strategy, according to what I understood, is to go astute on the market, not to overpay, negotiate, and fire sales. Meaning fire sales, get rid of the dead wood that's been accumulating from managers such as Van Gaal, Mourinho, Ole, and now who's got total control. That gives me an indication that this will never happen under the Glazer stewardship, that they give the manager full control in the way he wants it. Because the signings that we made has not been the sexy signings that are shirt sellers. That's one indication.
Yeah.
Number 2 is what I'm trying to say, that once we got the targets over the line, once the transfer window closes, there's another burning issue that needs to be from a PR nightmare perspective, and that's Mason Greenwood, right? How are we going to handle that? And number 3, once that is done and dusted, then we will have an announcement. Because some reports were saying also that announcement will most likely take place in September, and I kind of agree with that. Because to have all these 3 together, Rumble, will be too much of a PR disaster and Akiri suicide for the club. That is I wouldn't say is a conspiracy theory, but it's my logical thinking, combining to what I heard on the market, as I do speak to a lot of people, including yourself. But from a business perspective, though,
I think it sounds really interesting, and I absolutely understand how you think. And like, let's play with the idea that 9-2 had bought this club, and we call up Inter and want to buy Onana. What's the price tag? I'm sure it goes up to 75 million. Because they know we have money then.
Exactly.
So it definitely makes some sense. And I wouldn't put it at the top of my, because all we can do is build hypothetical scenarios. What makes sense, and every theory pitched will have some weaknesses and some strength. I wouldn't put it at the top. I still think, unfortunately, that the Glazers think that they will start getting too little money. But I definitely hope you are right.
No, but if I just backtrack the tape, because the way Manchester United to approve any signings, they operate in a hierarchical model, like an of approval, right?
Yeah.
So it works with the manager wants a certain type of player, gives it to the sporting director, in this case John Murtough. John Murtough have then escalated all the way to Joel Glazer in the case that signs off every deal.
Yeah.
Now, if it wasn't a shirt seller, Joel Glazer would say, not a chance. Go for the third or second or fourth choice, right? So the managers never got the first choice in target. Even Mourinho came out and say, like, throw his toys out of the pram and out of the Glazers. This time around, you've seen that Ten Hag has got all his first targets, and you see that Ten Hag put 11 players on a sales list to clear the deadwood.
Yeah,
that gives me an indication that Joe Glazer no longer sits and sign off, right? That's a clear and obvious sign.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, have it changed since Woodward ran the show? Well, definitely, and I think first of all, and that's kind of insane in itself, but we aren't no longer run by a guy without any football background that doesn't know the game, and I think I so recognize the way Manchester United have acted to how we see, for example, hockey teams in the NHL in the US. It's the same thing. They think it's like basketball. You need 5 guys with big names.
Mm-hmm.
But soccer is different. It doesn't work like that. And so they have gone away from this big name hysteria, going after guys like Sancho, Pogba, and I'm thinking that's the solution to everything. To at least letting Ten Hag build a team.
No, but that gives me I hear what you're saying, but that gives me the clear sign, obvious that this transfer market Glazers are not involved. Like, you know, because we've seen the speed of Onana, we've seen the speed of Højlund. We heard from Alfredo Pedula, which I had an exclusive on, you know, and he even mentioned that at the end of the day they didn't overpay, but they felt a little bit generous in offering extra bonuses, you know, so they want to do the right thing. Glazers would never do that. Glazers will never sign off on that, to be honest, right?
Yeah.
And that we're seeing the likes of players going out the door. That means that Glazers are just, it's summer, like, I don't really care, do whatever you want. I'm selling the club anyway, you know?
Yeah.
This is the take I'm seeing it.
Yeah.
So in order for what I'm backing the tape when I say you have to have a deliverable project plan, you know, if you've been involved in project manager, and from a PR media perspective, it does make a hell lot of sense because you're contracting out all your PR work to external agencies and agencies they do speak to. So they might have packaged this up in terms of launch, right? To say that, okay, first and foremost, if you remember, all the takeover news stopped, just totally stopped when the transfer market opened. There was no news about the takeover whatsoever. It was only focused on the transfer targets. And that is what you say again. If we had an announcement that we had new owners, people that you're negotiating with would know that you have money and would take us to the dry cleaner again. That's part of the strategy, according to my opinion, to say that we're acting like we have no budget, right? We have a limited budget. We released it to the press to say we only have 120 million to spend. Well, on the other hand, we have 250 to spend. Now, regarding the signings, Rumble, we heard a Ten Hag saying, money's there for the right player.
Yeah.
Okay. What does that mean? Well, Ten Hag is appointed analytical persons that clearly he gives for each position. He develops a persona profile based on what he mentioned, his rules, his principles, and mentality, and the passion to play, right?
Yeah.
He's passed this on to the analytics. They come up with a long list of players that fits for each position. Then they create a short list. This is what I know, though. Yeah. And that goes to the John Murta and the team, the football operation. Go fetch. This is Ten Hag's list.
Yeah.
So I get a lot of fans has not been happy with the Mason Mount. It's not a sexy shirt seller, but it's a different approach, basically. Yeah. This is what I'm saying. We are acting like a club. And this smells like Glazers are no longer involved in the operational side of it, right? Richard Donald is involved. John Murta is involved. All the analytics and the recruitment and football operation side is doing what the hell they want.
Yeah.
So when was the last time you saw this under Glazer's stewardship of the 18 years? Never.
Yeah, that's true.
Which leads us to we will come back to the takeover, like a little bit conscious of time. And which leads us to the FFP and the budgeting side of things, right? Because there's a lot of speculations regarding the press, because I just laugh, Mr. Rumble, because every year we get the same story from the same outlets to say that Manchester United only have 100 million to spend, 150 max. But guess what? How much have we spent so far?
That's a good question, but I think we're closing in on 200 million before everything is said and done.
Okay. So let's talk about the budget side of it. How much do you think that we have, barring that if we get all the players out, we are actually saving money on the wage bill, about 50, 60 million, if everything goes to plan?
No! God, please, no!
God damn, we ran out of time. If you want to know the answer, please stick around for the second part of this embargo, people, because this recording was done in a 1 hour and 10-minute session. If you do want to stick around to find out what's going on with the FFP and the financial, there's a lot of truth bombs that we covered here today. It's a lot of things for you to digest. So therefore, we leave a little bit more few hours for you to think about what was discussed here. We're going to talk about Harry Maguire's situation. Is it over? Is it not over? We're going to talk about Mason Greenwood, yet another logic and reason explosion of facts. And we're going to round up with the conclusion of the sales takeover. So stick around, see you later in the second part. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to this video, and we shall see you later. So bye for now.
That's all, folks.
Thank you so much for stopping by and watching MUFC Realist TV. Don't forget to like and subscribe and follow us on the socials.